Friday lesson. So in today's lesson we are going to be doing a bit of science and we are going to be exploring the different parts of a flower. So in today's lesson we are going to be looking at 5 different parts of a flower or a plant, and we are going to be learning about why those 5 different parts of the flower are important and what their role is in keeping that flower alive. Each part of a flower has a very important role in making sure that that flower or that plant stays alive and doesn't die. Have a quick think and jot down any parts of a flower or a plant that you already know about at home. Jot them down on your paper, and if you know why that part of the flower or the plant is important, also write that down. It will help you out a little bit later on, and also maybe if you've got a misconception about something, it will help you to understand where that misconception is, and then you can put the correct information into that place. Do that now. Pause the video here. So like I said, we are going to be looking at the 5 different parts of a flower. Now on the board behind me, I have attempted to draw my own flower. In my class, me and the children have a little running joke about Miss Rowney's drawings. I'm not the best at drawings. I hold my hand up at that, but I always try my hardest. So here is my picture of a flower on the board. So this flower here, I have drawn it as if I have cut it down the middle. So I've got a flower and I've cut it right down the middle so you can see all of the insides as well. Let's start off by labeling this plant here. And I think the most obvious one, well, to me, the first thing I see when I see a flower is I see the petals. Whereabouts are the petals on my flower? Here are my petals. They are the red bit around the outside. I'm not sure if you can see that very clearly, but hopefully you can. Okay, here are my petals. So I'm going to draw an arrow from my petals here. And before I tell you why the petals are important, have a think about why you think the petals are important at home. So the petals are important and they are brightly coloured normally. When you see a plant or a flower, the petals will be a nice bright purple or a red or a yellow. And the reason why the petals are important and the reason why they are those colours is so that it attracts the insects and the birds to the flower so that they can collect the pollen and take it away. So well done if you got that right. Just to explain how this lesson is going to work, because I've noticed that I've not actually explained it very well, I am going to label the different parts of the flower on my board here. While doing that, I'm also going to tell you why each part is important. I'm not actually going to write that down on the board because the task that I'm going to set you at the end of this lesson, it's a pairing exercise. On the one side, you're going to have all of the different parts of the flower. And then on the other side, you're going to have all of the description about why that part is important. Now, they're all going to be jumbled up and it's your job at home to match them up. That way it shows that you've remembered the information from what we are learning now. The next part of my flower, I'll stand to the side. The next part of my flower that I would like you to find at home are the leaves. Where are the leaves on here? Where are the leaves on here? Good, they are here. They're down here, look. Here are my leaves. So have a quick think about why the leaves are important in helping to keep this plant or flower alive. So leaves are important because they absorb the sunlight, and we know that in order for a flower and a plant to stay alive, that it needs to have sunlight. So that is the important role of the leaves. Another important role of the leaves is they absorb CO2. So CO2 is a gas that things like cars give off when they are driven around, and the leaves absorb this in, so that CO2 isn't really great for our environment, but the leaves help to absorb it in as well as the sunlight, and as a result of this, it helps to make food for the plant to stay alive. So the role of the leaves is something that might be new to you. You may not have known this before this lesson, so just make sure you have locked that information into your head that the leaves absorb the CO2 that's in the atmosphere and the sunlight, and then it helps to make food for the plant to stay alive. So the next part of the flower that I would like you to identify is the stem. Where is the stem on my picture? Where's the stem on my picture? Good, it's here, look. Here is the stem. I like to think of it as a straw. It looks a bit like a straw, and the role of it is a little bit like a straw. So going on that, and a little bit of a hint of what I've just told you, why is the stem important, and what's the role of the stem? The role of the stem is to transport water around the plant or the flower. It will make a little bit more sense after we've spoken about the roots. Now on my plant, I actually didn't have room to draw my roots, but we can imagine where they are because I'm sure all of you at home know where the roots are. So the roots, if this was a real life plant or a real life flower, it would be a huge flower, wouldn't it? But if this was real life, the roots would be somewhere down there in the ground. Have a think, I'm pretty sure a lot of you already know this, but have a think about why the roots are important. They have two very important jobs. Well done if you remembered that. You have remembered stuff that you have learnt at school. Well done. One role is to help anchor it into the ground. We know that the roots are in the soil below the flower or the plant, and it's not very often that we can actually see a plant's roots because they've anchored them into the ground. And plants need to be anchored into the ground so that when it gets windy and rainy and the weather's not so great, the plants don't just fly off. They need to be anchored into the ground and stay strong where they are. So that's one role of the roots, to help anchor them into the ground. And the second role of the roots is to absorb water and minerals from the soil to help them survive. So the roots absorb that water and soil, and then it goes up to the stem, and then the stem carries it up and spreads it and disperses it. That's a lovely word, I love that word. Disperses it out to the flower to help it to stay alive. The next one, which I'm not sure if many people may know about yet, but it is the anther. If I just explain what the role of it is first, you might be able to identify it on my drawing. So the role of the anther is to produce pollen, which when a bird or an insect lands on the plant, it brushes off onto them and it sticks to them, and then they can then take the pollen elsewhere. So the role of the anther is to release pollen. Have a look at my drawing and just have a think about where you think that might be. So hopefully you can actually see them on my drawings because they are quite small. They are here. Okay, so these things here are the anther. Not to be confused with this thing in the middle. We're going to learn more about this bit in the middle in the next science lesson because we're going to be looking at the female and the male parts of the flower. The pollen actually sits on these little, they look like earbuds, okay, the little bubbles on the end here. So that when the bee or the insect, I'm going to draw a bee actually so that you can see. Oh, there we go. There's a prime example of my bad drawings. Okay, so when the bee flies in, he's going to land in here. And then the pollen, oh, let me draw the pollen in a different colour. Let me just get a different pen. Pollen that's on here, so I draw the pollen in blue. It's normally a different colour, normally yellow, but we'll draw it in blue. There we go. So when the bee lands in here, because it's been attracted in by the petals, the pollen then brushes off onto him, and it normally, a lot of it goes onto their legs. Okay, so hopefully my little diagram there helped you to understand where the anther is. Remember, it's not this bit in the middle. Okay, we're going to learn more about that in the next lesson. So it's not that bit in the middle that looks like a wine glass the wrong way round, with these little bits on the outside. So hopefully you have remembered all of the roles of the different parts of the plant and why they are so important to keeping that flower alive. There's a lot that goes on, in fact, in keeping a flower alive, more than I think we know, but there are the basics for you. I'll insert today's task here for you to try at home. Like I said, it's just matching the words to the correct statements from what you have just learned. If you want to have a go at drawing your own flower at home and then labelling the different parts, and then possibly even writing your own description of why it's important, that would be absolutely amazing, and it would make me smile from ear to ear if I could see some of those. Thank you so much for another fantastic week of learning, and I will see you on Monday for another maths lesson.